What do you think Russell Wilson thinks about this move and the entire offseason that the Chiefs made? A texter correctly points out that Russ said he's just getting hit too much, and he doubled down on it. But the implication is very clear there. That means that the offensive line in front of him he feels like can be better, and especially when he was asked about his own role in the sacks, he talked about the touchdowns that sometimes happen as a result of the plays he extends.
This is where we have to understand the entirety of the conversation that's going on. Where, yes, Russ said he's not getting hit too much, but all of the different things that have come out about how Seattle has built the offensive line, the resources that they've spent on the offensive line, things that have been whispered from an agent, I'm fairly certain, to different media members, whether it's Mike Florio or whether it's Jason La Canfora. Yes, Russ was talking about just getting hit, but there are some reservations, at the very least, from his camp about how that offensive line has been built.
And that court, I bet, is whispering to him, look at what Kansas City did to make Patrick Mahomes protected. A guy in Mahomes who, let's be honest, is better at evading the rush than Russell Wilson has at this stage in his career, which, by the way, it's not, that happens. That happens when a guy gets older.
Let me raise my hand here and say, the goal of complaining is not to get the team to act, right? The goal of complaining should be to address the issue. I am not convinced. In fact, I believe that offseason headlines and acquisitions have way less impact on regular season events than we tend to realize this time of year.
Take a look at every free agency signing spree that teams go on.
We love to talk about it, and come September, it's not that those things are indifferent, but they're certainly not as big as, look, the acquisition of Dwayne Brown for Seattle was probably bigger and more important and more lasting than what it will be for Orlando Brown, right? We just didn't hear as much about Dwayne Brown, and now he's here. I don't think this changes the balance of power. I'm not sure that Kansas City, I don't think they'll be worse. I'm not sure how much better they will be.
But they are better. I think you have to say they're better. Orlando Brown is a good tackle. Joe Thuney is one of the better guards in the NFL. Yes, coming from New England. And also some of the opt-outs that they had last year. Laurent Duvernay-Tardif.
Yes.
He was one of their starters. So I do think that the offensive line is better this offseason than it was before. But you also have to compare the two approaches. Seattle could not have done what Kansas City did just because of the Jamal Adams trade, which they made.
You're right.
And I sort of go back, though, in time to the point where the Seahawks made that trade for Jamal Adams. And I wonder, if you're going to be as desperate as Seattle looked when they made that trade for Adams, where they trade 2 first-round picks to get a safety, would you have rather traded 2 first-round picks to get that tackle of the future? Because that is the diciest area for the Seahawks, I think, long-term right now. Right now, I don't look at any of the needs that they have right now as major holes, but the future hole that Dwayne Brown will leave eventually is a massive one, and finding the way to get the next Dwayne Brown, that's going to be really hard, and that's why you see teams do the desperate things that the Texans did and that the Chiefs appear to be doing by making a trade for Orlando Brown.
Yeah, but don't be desperate. I mean, you don't trade that to get the tackle of the future when you've got a guy in that spot. I mean, the lesson of this is don't get desperate. And maybe Seattle showed incredible discipline because they found Dwayne Brown, who I think is a better player than Orlando Brown Jr., and they didn't have to give up nearly as much as what the Chiefs just gave up to acquire him. I don't think that the Chiefs will come out of this with a better offensive line than Seattle in 2021. I don't think that the Chiefs' offensive line is better right now than Seattle's offensive line.
Well, where does Seattle's offensive line rank? Because they added Gabe Jackson. I think they're in the middle of the pack, and I don't think Gabe Jackson really makes them that much better.
Do you think Kansas City's higher? Just because they've made all of these things that have attracted attention?
Yeah, I do. I do.
Really?
Yeah, I do.
No.
I mean, Eric Fisher? I mean, come on. That guy was bad for a couple of years, and now all of a sudden he's decent?
Man. At what point did anybody talk about how bad Kansas City's offensive line was up until the Super Bowl? Everybody is overreacting to one game. Everybody's overreacting to one game, and the Chiefs have gone and fired everybody, and now they've made some moves. We don't know if they're good additions or not, because we haven't seen how those players will play. We also haven't seen what it will cost them long term. But no, I'm not buying the idea that all of a sudden they're ahead.
The last time Kansas City overreacted to something that did not work out for them, they fired their entire defensive coaching staff and half of their defense. They won the Super Bowl the next year.
let's not pretend they won the Super Bowl because of that defense.
But the defense wasn't a joke or abomination.
Let's not pretend that they won the Super Bowl because of the defense and not because they had the best quarterback in the league who dug out of a double-digit hole in each one of their playoff games.
I mean, that's fair, but the defense did make pretty big stops, I would say specifically against Tennessee in that game. And that was a surprise where they were able to hold Derrick Henry to what they did after giving up a lot of yards against him in the regular season.
Overreactions in the NFL don't tend to pay off.
I agree, but you just got to say
overreactions don't tend to pay off, and I am firmly skeptical about how good and how impactful all of these things will be. Seattle changed over its entire offensive line last season. I guess not as dramatically, but 3 guys. I think they're fine.
They're taking a step in the right direction, I think. They did at the very least last offseason, and Gabe Jackson's an upgrade over Mike Iupati, but I just disagree on this front. I do think that sometimes the overreactions work. Not often. I would agree with you there. I mean, how many times have we seen the crap teams like the Dolphins of the years past decide, all right, spending spree, let's go, and then, all right, we're 6-10 again, and our quarterback's still terrible. But I do look at what Kansas City did, and while, yes, the defense isn't the biggest thing for them, is the offensive line the biggest thing for them either? With Patrick Mahomes and his ability to extend plays, and yet they still addressed it as aggressively as they did because they felt like it was a marginal weakness for them. And they decide, you know what, these tackles aren't good enough. We're going to get the best guard that we possibly can. I do think that this overreaction makes them better.
I don't think they're a better offensive line than Seattle.
You don't?
And I think that they've spent significantly more resources on that.